All right, today's draft, the all-time great defensive plays that prompted a reaction far different than the reaction that the 10-year-old version of me had at the time, which was to go into the kitchen and cry on the floor for 20 minutes. Trivia question, Chris. Speaking of being on the floor, you had 2 starts in your career when you were never put on the floor of a football stadium. You weren't sacked. Twice in your career, you weren't sacked. Can you name the games?
Wow. There was 2 games I wasn't sacked. I don't know if I can name these 2 games.
Here's a hint. They were in back-to-back weeks. Does that help?
Okay. I'm going to say it was the last game of the year in 2005 versus the Saints, and then the wild card game against the Washington Redskins.
Oh, you're incorrect. Right year, but absolutely wrong. Although you got one of the teams right. It was regular season 36-35 win versus Washington, and then 30-27 win at Atlanta. Those were the 2 games where you weren't sacked. So I thought you'd remember at least one of them, since it only happened twice.
Yeah, well, right. It's you don't remember, like, I can remember, you don't remember sacks that much as a quarterback. You don't. A lot of times that's why sacks is overrated. Sometimes the offensive line will, feel good and be like, we didn't let up any sacks last week. And you'll be like, yeah, but I got hit on every drop back pass during the game. So it wasn't that fun, guys. I would have rather got sacked 2 or 3 times and been hit 25 less times. So it's one of those things you kind of block out as a quarterback altogether.
All right, I get the first pick, and I think the first one that comes to mind is, and I know when we decided to do this the other day, the first one I thought of was Steve Atwater, who will enter the Hall of Fame this year, blowing up Christian Okoye. I think it was a Monday night game. It was just one of those, it stopped Christian Okoye in his tracks, and it stopped anyone who was watching the game in their tracks. It doesn't look real. It still, to this day, does not look real. And this isn't Darren Sproles. Christian Okoye was a giant. And Steve Atwater, obviously smaller than Okoye, putting him on his rear end, Chris. So for me, if there was one pick in any draft, that's the pick.
That's a good one, Mike. It really is. I can remember watching that. I mean, that was a fun game. And you're right. Christian Okoye, the Nigerian nightmare, right, as they called him, he was famous for just absolutely running people over. So we had never seen him go backwards. And Steve Atwater, one of the greatest hitters in NFL history. All right, I'm going to go to one in my early life. It was the first maybe defensive play that ever made me go, oh. All right, the 1986 divisional playoff game. Joe Montana and the San Francisco 49ers coming to New York Giants and taking on LT. And the 1986, this play right here. Jim Burt crushes Joe Montana. LT, pick 6. I think that makes it 28 or 35-3. And I just remember going, oh, my gosh, we're going to kill the 49ers. And, yeah, as you can see, Joe was out on his feet. And I certainly don't like to see that. But, when you're a Giants fan and, your dad and team hadn't won a Super Bowl yet, you're going to do whatever you got to do to hope your team can win. That was a huge moment, I know, in my life, my dad's life, and everything about it. And I can still remember, even at 6.5 years old, sitting there watching that play.
And the speed that we saw there from Lawrence Taylor, just incredible. Almost looks
Insane.
Like we sped up the video, right?
My dad will claim.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, my dad would claim that he saw Lawrence Taylor run a 4.51 or 4.5 flat at 251 pounds on grass, which is supposed to be slower. So that just speaks to what I think you're talking about, the specimen of which is Lawrence Taylor.
But think about it. How often does a linebacker have a chance to run like that in a straight line in a game? When is that ever going to happen? Right. I think that's the only time I've ever seen a linebacker get the ball down the field and just fire out of a cannon with no one around him. You just don't see that. That doesn't happen on a football field. And he's one of the ones who had the rare speed to turn it into a touchdown before anybody could get in his way. All right, I got a lot I can choose from here.
I know, me too.
This one, and we talked about him yesterday, or at least we had a clip from a podcast you contributed to. It wasn't a regular season game. It wasn't a playoff game. It wasn't a preseason game. It was that albatross, the Pro Bowl, which currently is two-hand touch in full pads. The last time we saw a big hit in the Pro Bowl, and maybe the only time we saw a ridiculously big hit in the Pro Bowl, came when the late Sean Taylor decided to make Brian Moorman pay for deciding to run the ball. My God, it's worse than I remembered. It's worse than I remembered. Watch this. He just, oh my gosh, Brian Moorman, he knocked him back to California.
That is unbelievable. I totally forgot about this play, but you're right. That might be the last hit in the Pro Bowl. Oh, that poor punter. He thinks he's going out to Hawaii to collect the check and get some sun, and he gets derailed by Sean Taylor. And let me tell you, Sean Taylor is scary. I mean, he was scary. I mean, and RIP to him, one of the great specimens I ever played against. But that's the last guy you want to see running at you at full speed. Holy cow, that was a car wreck. All right, good pick by you. Very creative. I'm going to go to, I'm going somewhere close to home here again. I'm going to go to the NFC Championship game, Tampa Bay Bucks versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, the Bucks team, if you can remember, can't win in the cold weather, can't get to the Super Bowl, that great defense. But when Rondé Barber makes the pick six and returns it 90-something yards for a touchdown, that was one of those days where you just kept going, man, Tampa's not going to win this. They're not going to beat Philly. Philly's still going to come back. They can't do this. And then I remember just watching and, getting out of my seat, oh, my gosh, holy cow. And, of course, I didn't know Rondé Barber at that time. Would get to know him the next year. But just one of those moments where you went in complete shock. You thought Donovan McNabb was going to deliver. Instead, it was Rondé Barber and that Bucs defense. And to me, one of the great defensive plays of all time.
Now, I had a similar choice in mind, and Rondé Barber was a guy who always made plays from anywhere on the field. You never knew if he was going to blitz, what he was going to do. He was an incredible X factor for that defense. In the 2008 AFC championship game, Troy Polamalu had the interception return where, he was like the Tasmanian devil, right? Once he had the ball in his hands, he was unstoppable, and he didn't run in a straight line. He was all over the place, but that's not my pick. Well, we'll look at it anyway. It's not my pick.
It was
but what
amazing.
The heck? Let's look at it. He snags the ball, and he was the ultimate broken field runner as a defensive player. I used to joke that they should make him their kick returner because once he had the ball, nobody could get to him.
You're right, and he can fly, and he can make people miss. He definitely had punt return capabilities, Mike. You're right about that.
We talk about how quarterbacks have a great uncanny sense of the relation of themselves in space to others, and I think that was Troy Polamalu's best trait, and he used that when he played defense, and he used it on those occasions when he got the ball in his hands. But my official pick, at least we got to see the extra mid-draft bonus pick. This was I think it was a Thursday night game, Packers-Vikings. We've talked about this before. Warren Moon was playing quarterback for Minnesota, and we have talked about it because it looks good on the whiteboard, but when it's time to actually do it, the X's and the O's don't quite mesh because somebody in Minnesota thought it would be a good idea to have Chris Carter try to block Reggie White.
Great play.
It did not go well for Chris Carter, and it was almost a disaster for Warren Moon because he got Chris Carter thrown into his legs. And it was just amazing. And it's like, Reggie White, I think, was apoplectic. You're going to try to block me with this guy? And he finally's just like, the heck with this. Get out of here. And it almost took out the knees of Warren Moon.
That's amazing. Yeah, that is totally, hey, on the chalkboard, look, we got him blocked, guys. We're good. Don't worry about it. Oh, yeah, except that's maybe the greatest defensive player in the history of the sport, who can throw around 330-pound offensive linemen, let alone 220-pound wide receivers.
The hesitation from Reggie White was like, I can't believe they're doing this. They're really doing this. And he finally decides the hell with it.
Yeah.
Gone is Chris Carter.
Get out of my way. You're very creative today. Very good. I'm very, very impressed.
No, I actually prepared. You admitted earlier during a break that you forgot to prepare. That's the difference.
I never prepare for the draft.
Well, and that explains a lot. Go ahead.
I just go off a total recall. I'm with a great NFL encyclopedia, okay? All right. I'm going to another one, too, that's, not going to be in the lures of the all-time great defensive plays. But to me, it's still a moment where I went, oh, and it was, a little personal to me. 1989. I'm going back to Denver, Mike, where we already saw Steve Atwater, but this is Gary Reasons, okay? And I can't remember the running back's name. Humphrey. I'm right.
Bobby Humphrey. Bobby Humphrey from Alabama.
Watch his ear pads fly out of his helmet and pop into the air in the snow, and you got to watch closely, but you'll see it fall down.
Oh, there it is. I saw it over to the right.
Yes, is one of the great collisions. There it is, right there, too, in the history of football, and that was a huge moment. The Giants were fighting for a number 1 and number 2 seed in the NFC that year. Ultimately, we're the number 2 seed, and we know the Denver Broncos were a very good football team. They went to the Super Bowl that year and lost to the 49ers. But I'll never forget that play, Mike. That was a big-time hit, probably illegal this day and age in the NFL. And you know why else I won't forget that hit? Later that night, we had some crazy guy in our town come to our house and try to chainsaw down our mailbox at like midnight. And I can remember being 9 years old and just being like, what the hell is going on here? But that was one of my favorite defensive plays ever.
So another late night visit from Lawrence Taylor, it turned out to be. Right?
You're funny. You're funny.
I thought about another one that really wasn't during a play. It was when Jack Lambert threw Cliff Harris to the ground in Super Bowl 10. But then how about this play? How about this one? The only problem is it wasn't in the NFL. But do you remember? You remember this one, don't you? I think we've had it on the program before, once or twice or 17 times. Chris Simms, the audible, bad idea. There's Roy Williams, and there's the interception, and there's the touchdown.
That hurt. And let me just tell you, I'm going to have my Roy Williams, on the right, and he's got a lot of space. And if he makes one guy miss, it's going to be a huge game. And that was number 1 versus number 2. That play still hurts me, and that was just a great play by their Roy Williams, who was probably the best defensive player in college football at that time.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.